This is a statement regarding the ability to hold Zoom meetings on June 16th, 2021. Governor Baker signed into law an act extending certain COVID measures adopted during a state of emergency. This act includes an extension until April 1, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Just with the departments we have this evening, start out with community development.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill. All right, so we'll open the meeting with a roll call. George.
Here.
Great. Robert.
Yeah.
Nate.
Here.
Jack.
Here.
I am present, and Ryan is on medical leave. Okay, terrific. Thank you. So we'll start with Karen for the community development presentation. Nice to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Nice to see you all. Bill, will you load? There we go. So just to run through the PowerPoint, I don't know if you received the PowerPoint in advance. Mission statement is there. This was also included in the narrative. I added it to the memo that you all received too. We like to think our mission is to encourage and guide short-term and long-term community development initiatives and private investment that's sustainable and consistent with community character and which promotes Yarmouth as a desirable place to live, work, and visit. So Bill, you can advance. Should I just tell you when I'm ready?
Sure, go ahead.
Just to run through the divisions or functions of the department, we have 8 full-time and 1 part-time staff person. These are the areas you see on the screen are listed in alphabetical order so that we're not playing favorites with anybody. We oversee a variety of regulatory and more programmatic programs, and we work with a number of different committees. We oversee the community preservation program. I've included a slide and some information for you all to give you an update on the applications that were approved by the committee this year and which will be presented at town meeting. Conservation division, that's where we have 1 full-time person and 1 part-time. Conservation division is very, very busy this past year. COVID just seems to have brought on additional applications. I don't know if it's people at home finally getting around to different projects or, you know, and the numbers that I have don't reflect the number of just calls that the office receives with concerns about things going on or violations. But what I can tell you is we had 24 meetings and they saw 79 different applications, and that was up from 23 meetings in 2020 with 66 applications. Economic development, we have an economic development coordinator and a economic development committee, the Community and Economic Development Committee. That's Kyle Pedicini, and he provides developer assistance when people come into town hall and they're looking for information on where do we start with permitting. He helps them to line up the appropriate meetings and whatnot. Under economic development, also the Community and Economic Development Committee oversees the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund. That's funding that's derived from hotel motel tax, and it is spent largely on 3 different categories: marketing, events, and physical improvements. We've recently begun looking to spend on more projects that will be supportive of our wastewater efforts, which I think is a great venue to go down. Housing, we have an affordable housing coordinator, that's Mary Wagon. She works with both the Community Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust. The Affordable Housing Trust oversees the Affordable Housing Trust, which is largely funded through the Community Preservation Fund. recently we are, let's say that Mary provides a lot of help with folks who just walk in needing help finding housing. We work with affordable housing developers. We work with affordable housing providers. And right now we're working quite extensively with the community. Last night was the first of 2 housing summit nights, where we're reaching out to the community, finding out what their ideas are in terms of meeting our affordable housing gaps. We had pretty good turnout last night at the senior center. About 30 people showed up. We are planning a remote only housing summit for February 3rd, I think it is, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can stay tuned for information on how to join that. Historic, we have 2 different historic commissions. I'll just bounce around a little bit. They're actually listed sequentially. The Yarmouth Historic Commission is a bit programmatic, a bit regulatory. They oversee the demolition delay program. There were 6 projects that came through demo delay. Demo delay applies to any properties that want to kind of basically knock down what's there to put up something new. And it's applicable to any of the houses that are older than 75 years old. It's particularly, you know, a heavy lift when the projects come forth that are located in the National Register Historic Districts. We have 2. One is the Yarmouth Campgrounds. We don't see very much action from up there, but the Bass River National Register Historic District has seen a lot of people interested in doing stuff with their homes. Old Kings Highway is applicable to all properties north of the Mid-Cape Highway. We have quite a number of parcels in that area. They had a lot of activity this past year. They saw an increase. Their most common form of permit is a certificate of appropriateness. They issued 145 certificates of appropriateness. That was up from 112 in 2020. Seeing a lot more activity in the solar panel realm. They also review demolitions that happen, and the office works closely with the building department to issue express building permits. Planning board, and I have Kathy Williams here tonight as well. Planning board met at least 23 times on zoning issues. They had a heavy slate of zoning articles for the fall town meeting, and they spent the better part of the year working on the visioning exercise, which hopefully everybody had a chance to participate in one of the workshops and or the survey. All of that information will be presented to the Board of Selectmen sometime soon. Last but not least is the Zoning Board of Appeal. And their number of petitions actually dropped a little bit. They went down from 63 petitions to 58 in 2021. Just to, you know, give everybody a shout out, we also work with ad hoc committees. I didn't list on here. The Drive-In Site Utilization Committee, the Water Resource Advisory Committee, or the Design Review Committee. But those are all other committees that we work with. This all involves, you know, open meeting law and just a lot of customer service. So anyways, that's basically the Community Development Department. You can advance, Bill, please, and thank you. So this past year, I mentioned the visioning exercise that really did take up quite a bit of work and outreach. Special projects, the Riverwalk Park Boardwalk Loop and event space. We're working hard on that. Kathy in particular, together with the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee, we've moved forward working with our consultant Beta on design and permitting. The committee right now is meeting monthly, and it's looking good. And the committees, you know, it's nice. We really do have a team effort, because while the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee is kind of spearheading the effort, there's a lot of outreach to the Conservation Division. They did they made a visit to the Concom informally, I think a couple weeks ago. There is a lot of coordination going on with the Community and Economic Development Committee, who are very interested in developing the event space and encouraging utilization of that site. Other staff, Jeff Colby from DPW, Carl Von Hohn. It's kind of an all hands on deck type of effort. Yankee Village is moving along slower than we would like, largely because of that heavy load that you saw in the conservation that I mentioned about the conservation division. That park restoration, we've been able to line up some additional funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program that will help us enable improvements at the two adjacent sites as well, where there's Mill Creek Park and Chasebrook Park, really to create one master plan for a holistic park. Then, of course, there's just ongoing regulatory and program management that I highlighted already. You can go ahead, thanks. The budget overview that's here, you can see we're on track for 22. Wages, so and I know you have the larger packet with the personnel summary form. Our wages are offset substantially through Community Preservation Act funding, tourism revenue funding, and the Affordable Housing Trust. Our expenses have largely stayed the same over many years. They are broken out into categories: professional and technical, and I'll come back to this one. Professional and technical, these are the things that where we may use for a consultant from time to time. It's not a huge pot of money, but we have been using it regularly to help offset some of the costs that come up with the historic properties in town. Those are the Judah-Baker Windmill, the Baxter Grist Mill, and the Taylor Bray Farm.
Karen, could I interrupt you and ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
And I don't know if you saw the questions that were
I
sent.
did see the questions.
So that kind of goes to one of the questions that I had, which is that, request for kind of housing commission staff support. Is that something that could be funded through CPC? So Stephanie, I had questions on the historic, and is it eligible for CPC? So CPC can't be used for maintenance. That's the one thing that CPC money cannot be used for. We've been successful, unfortunately, when things get maintenance is delayed long enough, it's really a rehabilitation. So that's where we are with the Baxter Grist Mill. That's where we are with the Taylor Bray Farm. A source of funding that could be used is the tourism fund. We'd have to work with the CEDC to secure that funding. Right now, the costs are covered through our department budget in conjunction with DPW. Yeah, and it looked like they had looked for dedicated funding for education and outreach efforts as well. Is that something that can be funded through CPC?
That might be more of a stretch. It's certainly something we can look into. I think that with the other costs aren't so extensive. So they would like to do some educational efforts similar to what we currently do with Old Kings Highway. Right now, Old Kings Highway, we do mailing through the water bills once a year to remind people that they're located in the district, and there's a set of rules that apply. And it's a good way to just reach out to folks who might not otherwise be aware of the special rules that apply based on where they live. The Historic Commission would like to do that same kind of thing down to the historic districts to get back to that demo delay comment. I think it's something that the Historic Commission would be able to generate the content of the mailing. So it's really just doing the advertising. And I think that we could commit to covering that within the ComDev budget. I don't think that that's really an add-on. The education and outreach, they have two different kinds of activities in mind. I think one is, outreach through the schools and that type of thing. The other is really a signage campaign at some of the historic properties. So again, that could be a CPC request because it really would be improving the historic site, or it would be suitable for tourism funds as well.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
You're welcome. So the other costs that are in that expense budget are printing costs. We print up zoning bylaws and those mailings, office supplies, seminars and mileage, and just dues, membership, and subscriptions to largely to professional organizations like the APA or the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Officers. So there is, and I don't know, Bill and Bob, if you want me to jump into this, there is a footnote here because, and I think that Bill sent out earlier today a revised, I don't know if it was a budget detail or a budget summary page that you sent out, Bill, with revised figures. There's changes that we had wanted to include into the wage line here.
Yeah,
One is in, sorry, go ahead.
it was the budget summary sheet that I think that was provided to me and showed the update. I can go through that. I can screen share that if you want. But
That'd be
each
fine. I
finance,
can try to, I'm happy to paraphrase if you want, or.
Well, I think it would be helpful to just know which one that you're talking about, because when I look it through the document, it looks like it would be slide 9 on the presentation. And I just want to make sure that we're looking at the same thing, apples to apples.
I don't think it's slide 9, Stephanie.
Okay, then that's, I guess, CPC.
Yeah, that's
The
the
spreadsheet
CPC
that I see.
recommendation.
I'm not seeing any other spreadsheet.
Bill, you've got that in a shareable spot?
yes, I will stop sharing the presentation and I will bring up that spreadsheet. And this should be it with the updates, correct?
That's correct.
There's an
So-
amendment in the recommended budget that I sent this in from the budget in the original packet. The changes are in that 511,000 community development full-time positions. I think it was 457 and change. It's 462,822. And the part-time position is 22127. And that was amended to reflect an oversight that I made in the recommending the wrong figure for this, the actual wages of the department. So we've updated the figures to be more accurate.
Sorry, Bob, can you just run through one more time what it was that you changed?
Compensation, both of them are in the top, the compensation community development salaries,
Mhm.
and the 511,000 full-time positions changed from 457 and changed to 462,822. And the community development part-time positions went up from, it's 21,000 and changed to 22,127. And those are the accurate figures.
So we're talking about $6,000, essentially.
Yes.
Yes,
All right. I'm not terribly worried about that. Thank you.
I just wanted to be correct with all the numbers.
Okay, sorry for any confusion on that.
Yeah, appreciate you highlighting that, though. Thank you.
Yep. So that's real. I mean, the two, Bill, I don't know if you're going back to the presentation, really the only changes from 22 to 23 in our budget are, wages, and that's for the contractual changes that have happened, as well as we're anticipating a reclassification of the Economic Development Coordinator position to help add on some additional duties, including Green Communities Act oversight. And then the other add was a $1,000 increase on expenses, and that covers additional advertising costs that we're anticipating. The Register is not taking our legal ads anymore, so we have to go to the Cape Cod Times, and that costs a whole lot more.
I think we're on the next slide.
You can go ahead, Bill.
Sure. And next one after that, or?
Yes, please. So what are our challenges? You know, we already talked a little bit about the historic structure maintenance. These are, you know, and I think it ties back to some of what Kathy and the planning board found in the visioning exercises. Really, I think folks, there's a lot of great stuff here in Yarmouth, and I think that people really want us to take care of things. And to the extent that we can, you know, systematically plan for our historic structure maintenance, that would be helpful. They're truly assets for the community. And Stephanie, as you pointed out in your question, you know, they're a great tourism driver. All three of our sites that we have, and there's more. There's a lot of work on ancient cemetery. That's a big draw for people. Indian Memorial is a really nice thing. So it's kind of how do we add to that pot, and maybe it means looking elsewhere and just coordinating with our peers here in town. Other challenges, just competing, and these are the same as last year, guys. You probably remember them. Just competing priorities. We have a lot of regulatory volume going on, and we also have a lot of program work, and the program work is all very exciting and it's popular, and sometimes it's harder to get to just because we have a heavy duty regulatory load. You know, I'd hope that we'd be able to find room for additional staffing and conservation to help free Kelly up, but I don't think that this is the right budget year for that. But maybe someday, and we can do, you know, more on land management. I know Stephanie had one other question. I'll just touch on some of the questions you asked. You asked about a land acquisition plan. Do we have one? And it's really, it's not formal. I haven't seen one, but the primary goals are always land around the water wells, the well heads, and then anywhere where we can kind of connect the dots. That's why Yankee Village was such an important acquisition. We had two parks, one on either side on Route 28, and kind of scoring that middle parcel was a big success. Related is support for multi-year projects. This stuff just takes forever, and it's difficult. We as staff are just as impatient as the public about getting some of this stuff done. But those are what I see as our big big challenges here. Don't know.
Just to follow up, Karen.
Yeah, please.
So with regard to the land acquisition, for those of you who might not have had a chance to see my question, it was just given how limited open there is left of undeveloped space and the price of it. You know, I know some communities are kind of approaching things with a strategic land acquisition plan to say, let's make sure that we're getting it, like you said, in wellhead where there's wellheads, but also you know, where there's existing adding on to already preserved spaces, as opposed to kind of like, you know, 1 acre kind of in the middle of a development that
Right.
nobody's going to really be able to, you know, besides maybe 5 neighbors would be able to enjoy. So, you know, I think that it would be worthwhile given how high land costs are going to continue to be, you know, for the department or for the Community Preservation Committee to look at it that way. One resource that I would suggest is that the Association of Preserved Cape Cod and Housing Assistance Corporation recently did a map. You're nodding your head, so I'm assuming you're familiar with it.
Yep.
Yeah, they did a mapping project basically of what's left to be developed on the Cape what is more appropriate for open space preservation, wellheads, that type of thing, and what's more appropriate for housing. So that could help inform that that strategy as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. I'll give a shout out for our another committee that didn't make the list at the beginning was the Open Space Committee. And that we've been working with them quite closely on the Yankee Village project. And then whenever we get inquiries from people, looking to buy land. We have our land disposition committee, that didn't make the list either, but then people looking to sell their properties. And that's where the Open Space Committee comes in. And they do a great job, and they really look at it. Does it make sense for all those reasons you just mentioned? How broad is the public benefit that is going to be derived from any potential acquisition? The next slide. The next item. So we have like the free cash ask for the local comprehensive plan, and then the community preservation funding. I also have the other questions that Stephanie had shared ahead of time. How would you like to proceed, Stephanie?
Well, I think you can kind of finish running through your free cash funding request and the rest of your presentation.
Okay.
And then I think we can take, if you're able to kind of weave in questions that you already know have been asked in terms of your presentation, great. If not, that's fine. We can sort of put it towards the end with questions.
Okay.
And obviously, it's like, as we're going along, if members see anything that they want to pause, we can do that too.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to talk about the free cash funding request for the local comprehensive plan.
As Karen mentioned, the planning board has really spent the last 16 months in a very intense public engagement process to develop a vision plan for Yarmouth, where we want to be in the future with some general goals of how we might be able to do that. They've basically completed their work and they've submitted it to the Board of Selectmen, and we're looking to get on the agenda with the board in the very near future in order to formally present that plan to them. But the obvious next step is to move forward with updating our local comprehensive plan. There's many sections that are rather outdated, and we want to be sure that we can get a certified LCP through the Cape Cod Commission. One thing that we did find during the visioning, we had $20,000, which we did use to hire a consultant. For the very beginning part. We weren't able to have them help us all the way through it, but they really helped us get through all of those heavy workshops and roundtables and the initial survey, which collected a great deal of information, and they kind of summarized that. And the planning board was able to take that and run with it. So the planning board really saw the benefit of having a consultant. They know that this is a very long-term goal of the Board of Selectmen. So they really just want to maintain this great momentum that they have going with the vision plan and get to the local comprehensive plan. They felt the best way to do that would be to ask for a free cash grant to help us hire a consultant to help town staff and the planning board.
Thanks, Kathy. I think that's pretty standard at this point, right?
I'd like to think so.
Any questions for Kathy on this request?
Just a note, this would be a warrant article and it's not really in your spreadsheets for the operational budget. And we have asked departments to bring in some of their warrant article ideas as part of the process.
So this is, Bob, part of your overall, what is it, 1.5 million or something? I'm trying to remember the figure that you wanted to stay within for free cash.
Yeah, no, this is not within, that was the capital item. This is a separate request that I know is contemplated. We've discussed it, but it's the first I've seen of the numbers and things. So the articles are due by January 25th, so we'll have them all. But this is not part of any previous request.
Okay. Other questions for Kathy or for Bob? Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
All righty. So this is the standard, budget presentation template. So recommendations to consider for addressing future challenges. Just, I think this visioning exercise has been very helpful. I think the local comprehensive plan will help to keep vetting and identifying the priorities and really the will of the public. What do people want us to be doing? I think it's really worthwhile. We've made some progress on moving forward with electronic permitting and record keeping. I think getting to one of your questions, Stephanie, about the economic development coordinator and what are some other priorities, aside from broadband, I think making the permit process, easier every chance we can is a good thing. I think that we have very good guidance in place. I think that if we can educate folks on the process and help explain the rules, that would be helpful, and just sharing information. And then last but not least is just building staff capacity to provide opportunity for growth. We, unfortunately, we lost a good staff person this past year in our historic office. We were successful getting a replacement who's dynamite, but it's something I'm cognizant of, is wanting to keep things moving forward and help building capacity just as we go forward. And some of us are getting older, and just helping folks to grow within the position to help create a strong workforce here at Town Hall. So you can go to the next one, Bill.
And Karen, are there any potential revenue generators that, if you had an investment in more staff, or you had an investment in a certain type of technology or something that, it's it takes money to spend money, right? So if there was a concerted effort to invest something in one of your departments, and is there anything there that could potentially serve as a revenue generator?
I think that we have done some through housing, Stephanie, and we have the Ready Renter list that's been pretty successful in helping to fill smaller scale affordable housing developments where the developers are, it's kind of the cost of advertising and filling open properties. If you have an apartment or something like that, that can be hard. It can be hard to navigate. It can be expensive. And we've done a good job. And we have a couple other subscribers. I think Falmouth might have subscribed to fill some units. Barnstable, Dennis, I think, did at one point. Other areas, it's something more for us to keep thinking on. But I think housing comes to mind. We have some strong institutional knowledge going on there.
Yeah, I can see if you're charging other towns for it, how it would be a revenue generator. So anything else in the way of like economic development, or anything else that, the town does well that maybe other towns might not have the capacity for, or the ability to do. I just think, and you don't have to answer this question right now. Maybe think about it.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
hopefully it won't be a full year before we see you next. But I think that's something I would love to see all department heads be thinking about. Is we all know that we have an aging, population in terms of, not only our constituency, but also in terms of employees within town halls. We know that the price of housing is going up, and therefore the cost that municipalities have to pay for housing stipends and other things is going to increase, or wages. And we know that, there's going to eventually be, cut services, particularly on the Outer Cape. And it's going to kind of make its way this way. So knowing all of those things, and knowing that more likely than not, regionalization is going to be the only real option that, municipalities on the Cape are going to be able to do and maintain a level of services. Can we position ourselves in such a way that we are poised to offer some of those services charge for them, and have an additional stream of revenue that we can put towards growing those departments,
Yep.
towards wastewater, et cetera.
No, I will keep thinking on it, and I'll work with Bill and Bob as well. So,
Thank you.
If I may, inherently, there are issues that have inherent conflicts. So economic development, you always want to try to get great jobs in the region, but if there's a company that is advantageous to the town, how does the staff decide when they're working with multiple towns? So,
because we want them here.
Yeah, I've seen those sort of conflicts arise as people try to do economic development in a region. So sometimes it works better as a county or a regional planning agency, but less so as a shared town. So you have to watch out for the conflicts to the extent that it would be advantageous to have that skilled staff in your town versus another. So, but then there are other services you can provide that are good regional.
Yeah, licensing is one that comes to mind. I think that's pretty much it for my questions. I think I had one other, which was just about, but it's on the CPC, so we can talk about that later.
Okay. Bill, you can go to the next one. Thanks. So this is just a little spreadsheet that gives you a snapshot of where we are today. It gives you the fund balances that are in place going forward. We've projected FY23 appropriations just based on the levy number that's being used in the town budget. If we add the fund balance on top of the FY23 appropriations, we have, a healthy community preservation fund of $3.8 million. And that is the number that reflects the surcharge with the exemption in place that we had adopted previously. We're budgeting the maximum amount, which is 5% of anticipated receipts for administration. We break that out into wages, some fringe benefits, and then professional and technical. Tend to use that type of that fund for things like appraisals or things that are ancillary to the community preservation program. It was a slower year in terms of applications, and I think that things out in the world have slowed down a bit just because of COVID. We had the applications. Some of the folks that were approved at the last town meeting are still just getting going on their spending. But the 4 applications that we have here are the Affordable Housing Trust. And they made a request. There was actually a very strong discussion that went on within the Community Preservation Committee around this appropriation, because you can see that the kind of the 10% allocations, I see an error. I'm biased. I see an error. But they were generally around $184,000. And the Community Preservation Committee felt strongly that where that money is traditionally requested by the Affordable Housing Trust, that we also fund the cost of wages that come out of that fund, so that we're truly setting aside the 10% for the housing program itself. So that's the 240. There's a memorial arch and water pump. Folks might recognize it. It's right on the bend on Route 6A at Summer Street. It's a really beautiful arch. It's been neglected for a long time. Historic Commission is looking to restore it, not so that it's working, but just so that it's preserved, and it really is quite lovely. Ancient Cemetery is looking for additional funding. They've had a robust program of gravestone cleaning and kind of historic record documentation on the folks that are buried up at Ancient Cemetery. That is in conjunction with the Department of Public Works. Cemetery Division is very much involved there. The last request that's been approved by the CPC is $102,500 for the Friends of Bass River. That's for continued work on the restoration of the Upper Bass River watershed. And Stephanie, you had asked a good question about that one. And that was, I made some notes. Where'd it go? You had asked, Stephanie had asked, why is a private group doing this rather than the town, and how does it fit in with the larger comprehensive wastewater management plan? And I had a chance to talk with Jeff Colby today because, you know, it's wastewater. I look to Jeff. Initiatives like this are actually part of our comprehensive wastewater management plan. You know, we all think about sewer, and that's of course the biggest component, but things like fertilizer and just improving our flushing to estuaries is also an important part. That's where this comes into play. Working with Friends of Bass River, it's really a partnership here. The efforts are being coordinated. They're doing some work that, you know, staff might not otherwise have the capacity to get done. They're hoping to get the project all the way through permitting, at which point it really would get turned over to the town for the construction part of it. But, you know, this will positively impact the watershed. It'll help get the nitrogen out, and, you know, it could conceivably reduce how much you need the sewer up there. So I hope that, does that answer kind of your questions, concerns, Stephanie?
Sorry, I'm having Zoom issues. So yeah, I mean, in general, you know, flushing and work that you do in estuaries can make a big difference in wastewater. So conceptually, all for it. I guess I needed a refresher on why it was that a private group was initiating it, and
Yeah.
like why was it we weren't doing it? Is it just a bandwidth issue, or?
It's you know, I think that the Friends of Bass River feel very strongly about it, and they were advocating it for it, and they've really helped to generate a lot of support for this particular project. So they were able to keep it moving forward by going through the design and permitting and all of that. Town staff's been very much part of the process. Kelly Grant from Conservation's been heavily involved, Carl Von Hohn, and again, folks from DPW, I think Jeff and Amanda Lima have been very involved.
So is the reason that it would be moving, you know, if they're moving it along kind of at a faster pace than we would have been, is that because it would have fallen later into our comprehensive wastewater management plan?
I believe so. I can double check that with Jeff, but that's my understanding.
That would be helpful. And even if Jeff
Yeah.
can mention that, you know, when he comes into us, that would be helpful, just information to have.
Okay.
Did you have anything else you wanted to present, or should we open it up?
No,
for
that's it.
questions?
You know, traditionally we've had the Community Preservation Committee make a kind of a more polished presentation. That's certainly something I let them know. I forwarded the presentation and everything to them. They were aware I was coming tonight and providing a preview. If you have, you know, additional questions or want to meet with them, I'm sure they'd be happy to do so.
So I'll open it up to members for their questions on the CPC budget.
Karen, I think you answered my question. I was just curious what this related to and how you relate this to the budget book numbers. But now I understand this is the funds that are raised with the surcharge on the property tax And you're just showing us how you disperse that.
Yeah, correct. I think like Bill mentioned, he had asked for the warrant articles to be included as part of the departmental presentation. So we included this here tonight.
Yeah,
But yeah,
okay.
you're correct. It's the this is the surcharge off of the property tax. And then we do have a hefty state match, because of
Right.
given the price of real estate and the transactions that have been going on. We've been able to leverage some good match.
Speaking of the price of real estate, that does bring up my other question on the affordable
The housing question. So the housing, they do have funding set aside for the buy down program. I think that they, and Bob, you can chime in as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. I think the idea was, I think they went into the buy down program understanding that that delta between a market rate and an affordable home is really pretty big. And it's a big subsidy to be spending for one unit of affordable housing. That said, I think that the philosophy really is that there's no one solution for our affordable housing gap between our needs and our demands. And the trust is working on a number of things. I mentioned the Housing Summit. They're looking for new ideas, want to know which direction the town wants to go. Does the town want more multifamily housing on Route 28? Do they want to do scattered site rental? Other areas where the trust has been very engaged is veteran housing. I know the town would really, the trust would really like to be able to present some housing for veterans. Habitat, we haven't had a habitat project in a long while. They're also looking at town-owned land. They were considering buying some government land from the federal government up on Route 6A right by Peterson's. That land, I think it was owned by the FAA. They were thinking to buy that and turn that over. But, the buy down's really just one. I think that, it's anything and everything they are open to for sure.
So this 240,000, if I'm
Mhm.
understanding you correctly, 92,000 of that is going towards wages and benefits.
No. So and I can't use a pointer, but the wages that are listed here for community preservation, these are for community preservation. So those fund the administrative assistant who works with our community preservation committee. Some of my wages are offset through community preservation funds as well, because we do so much work on the program and the various projects. The funds that get deposited or transferred, the Affordable Housing Trust puts in an application like anybody else would. If the article is approved at town meeting, then we don't have a contract. What we do is transfer the funds into the Affordable Housing Trust accounts. And I think it's 57. It's again 57. It just happens to be the same number of that is wages. The rest, the balance of that would be for various programs.
So I thought what I heard you say was that the committee felt that it was important as it relates to the 10% for housing, that the way that you achieve that is by making sure more of that is going to wages.
My
Did I
heater
mishear
just-
that?
Can you repeat? My heater just came on and I lost everything you said.
No problem. What I thought I heard you say, and I may have been mistaken, but what I thought I heard you say was that the Community Preservation Committee felt strongly that in order to get to that 10% towards housing, that you needed to include more towards wages. Did I mishear that?
It's a different 10%. So it's well, and maybe it's both. It's two 10%, but CPA funds, when we get we make our estimate on what the revenue will be on the local surcharge, the local percent, the 3% minus the exemption. We add in the match, the state match that comes in, and then we set aside the reserve funds. And so there's 4 ways you can spend CPA money. 3 of them have dedicated reserves and requirements that at least 10% of the revenues go into those funds. Housing is one of them. The other 2 are open space and historic preservation.
Yeah,
With
it's 10, 10, and 10, right?
10, 10, and 10. Yep, you're absolutely right. What has happened in the past is the Affordable Housing Trust, there's been a conversation where the kind of deposit on that 10% for the affordable housing goes to the trust. In this case, the 10% wasn't enough to cover also they wanted 10% plus the wages that get assigned for the staffing for the Affordable Housing Trust. So the sum total was closer to 240 than the 184, which would have been a regular 10%.
So was that also the case with open space?
No, that's the error. It's an error on my spreadsheet that I just caught while we were talking. No, because open
What
space.
should that figure be for open space then?
It should be 184.
Okay.
I'm going to double check these figures and I'll get them to Bill and Bob for you, just so that it'll make me feel better. To
Okay.
make sure we have the right numbers.
Thank you. Other questions for Karen as it relates to the community preservation? Or I guess we could just open it up to other questions just relating to the departments within her division or the divisions within her department.
Stephanie, maybe if I could just have 1 second.
Of course, Kathy.
Thank you. I didn't realize that we're going to be presenting potential articles for the warrant on the annual town meeting because the planning board is taking a look at 2 potential zoning articles for the annual town meeting. One of them is being presented by the Yarmouth Community Partnership and is related to temporary seasonal employee housing. And the planning board is also looking at some zoning amendments to clarify short-term rentals with regard to them being allowed in town, in addition to maybe putting some specific types of provisions on them with regard to parking, occupancy, and other things to regulate them a little bit more. So they're still in the process of flushing those out, but there are 2 zoning amendments that the planning board is looking at right now.
And just out of curiosity, I was under the impression that zoning amendments always happened in the fall when we kind of split up town meeting like that.
I've never heard formally that that's the way it would go.
Just
because we have-
informal.
In 2019, we had both annual and special. I think sometimes with zoning, certain things come up. And we certainly want to address short-term rentals in our zoning bylaw before the summer season comes up so that we can have that enacted for the heavy tourist season.
One other question, since you mentioned short-term rentals, and obviously we are counting so much on the short-term rental revenue collection towards our wastewater. Kathy, do we have anyone in town hall who is responsible for, checking like AirDNA or the sort of back end on Airbnb and other stuff to verify that units that are being rented are actually being registered in town and they're paying their taxes?
I think there's some work that gets done through the health department on that. It gets back to workload as well. People who are doing these rentals have to register obviously with the state, and there has been some checking with regard to people who apply for our local licensing for rentals, as well as those who are on the DOR list. And I think there has been some sporadic perusal of different places to see if they are properly registering with the town, but there's just not the staffing level to do all the inspections, to do all the permitting, and then also do an extensive amount of checking in that way, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
If I, if I may, the warrant articles we'll be looking at now and moving forward are sort of a fiduciary nature. So the ask for the 150,000 and other things, we'll be looking at that. I mean, I know the planning board has a process for warrant articles, so they wouldn't necessarily be in the purview of the finance committee because there's no ask per se.
Just being related to short-term rentals, exactly as Stephanie
Right.
said, and relying it on a revenue source for our wastewater. I just wanted to be sure you guys were aware of it, that's all.
Thank you, Kathy. George?
Kathy, do you have any sense of what portion of the short-term rentals are not reporting that they are? What I'm trying to get at is how much, just a wild ass guess, you don't have to be specific, but how much revenue are we losing?
That's really hard for me to say. I think the people in the health department might have a better understanding of that. I do
It's
know
not
that
chump
the-
change though, is it?
I honestly don't know. I do know that they, and maybe Mark's coming on, he might be aware of that. I'm sure they do find and identify them periodically. They find that people who used to be registered, all of a sudden this year they didn't, and then they find out they're still renting it, and they kind of pull them back into the system and get them licensed on a fairly regular basis.
I mean, what I'm essentially getting at is your response is, we don't really know because we don't have the staff. And I want to make sure that this is not a huge revenue source that we are missing. Because damn it, there's a reason to hire the staff, if nothing else.
That could pay for itself and then some.
Right.
Yeah, if I may, to Kathy's point, it's actually the health department that manages that with the building department permitting. So both Mark and Bruce are up next. I think we can probably take that up there to get
Okay.
more direct.
All right, that sounds good. Any other questions for Kathy or for Karen before we move on? No, well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us and for your presentation. And hopefully we will see you again soon at town meeting, if not sooner.
All right,
Thank
thanks so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right, so we've got building next. I'm going to go building and then health.
Correct.
Great.
Hello.
Hi, Mark. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Grills, the deputy, the inspector, the director of inspectional services, as well as the building commissioner.
I think we can lower his budget now. He admitted it.
Are we giving him a?
Yeah,
Actually, I
that's
have
a
two
promotion.
titles now,
Dinner.
Bob. You should be doubling it. Thank you. But moving on. So thanks, Bob. I love your support. So the mission, I'm just gonna read. I sent a memo. I understand it was late. It's just crazy busy down here, but I'm gonna read from the PowerPoint, and then the memo references the PowerPoint sort of, or you can follow it along through there. But in any event, the mission statement is the building department's primary role is public safety. We protect the lives and the property of the residents as well as visitors to the town of Yarmouth. We contribute to the economic development by educating the public through equitable enforcement of the Mass State Building Code and all local bylaws that are under our purview. Next, thank you. The recap of key points and highlights from the past year. Our turnovers were, that number doesn't seem accurate, for 617. We had 7,103 permits issued. It's all permits across the board. We had around $617,000 in turnovers. We addressed numerous violations. While people are sitting at home, they pay too much attention to their neighbors. So, you know, we're visiting and knocking on doors quite often these days. Police and fire responses to overcrowding or illegal vehicles, people living in trailers, vehicle impacts into buildings. Those are the type of responses. That number was 62. Permitting consultation, that, you know, despite COVID and even with the doors locked to some degree, we stayed busy. You know, there's been numerous times that, you know, all three of my inspectors were at the counter going over permitting with somebody, the noise is, quite high. And then also that's people coming into my office with larger scale projects, such as the ones in site plan review. One of them happens to be the Irish Village is about to undergo a huge renovation project. So next. This is just basically the budget overview, and the only real thing that jumps out at me is the fact that the budget appears to have jumped by $50,000 roughly, but OPEB is now back into the budget where it had not been funded for the past 2 years because of COVID, and the salaries did increase as a result of negotiations with the unions, and then we had to provide those salary increases. All right. The changes, there we go. Salary increase are negotiated through the collective bargaining agreement process. The building department organization has been modified to allow for a deputy building commissioner to take a little bit of heat off of me to deal with the shed that's built too close to the property line. And a building inspector, one of my inspectors, Tim Sears, has assumed the responsibilities of the position. The existing full-time inspector position, which Tim vacated, is now being downgraded to a part-time position. And there's the $20,000 number that I can't find in the budget, but Ed assured me that it was there, so I'll take his word for it. And that's to pay for that part-time position. This position is expected to remain a part-time position in the short term, although as permitting increases, we're finding it more and more difficult to deal with large issues such as violations and things of that nature that take an extensive amount of time, which actually have no fee associated with them. So writing letters and appearing in court, we don't get to collect any money as a result of those visits. All right, next. Trying to make this quick. Everybody looks so excited. Challenges facing the departments. Both departments, building and health, have seen a steady increase in the volume of phone calls, permits, and licensing, just to name a few. Staff is just, you can feel the stress levels, and I can hear it in their voices, and because everybody, I think, really does want to do a good job, but when this much work hits you that fast, it's hard, and people get frustrated, and that's understandable. Maintaining the ability to provide a level of service that the public has come to expect. Staffing levels in the building department, the spreadsheet I have in front of me shows that we actually have one less person than we had in 2010. And although permitting has certainly increased, we're also having a major issue with our documents that we receive on a daily basis, as we have no place, once they're scanned and put into Laserfiche, we have no place to store them. The water department building over on Union Street is full. We are working on going paperless to the best of our ability and still meet the records retention law requirements. And by that, we're implementing OpenGov across the town, and building health, Karen's offices, we're all going towards this online permitting system where the current system doesn't allow that large of a file to be submitted when you apply for a building permit application. So people are still coming here. And when we receive paper, we have to store paper. So I'm trying to get away from that to the best of our ability, but some people are hard to change. But with the new program, which has taken a stall, we're hoping to get out of the paper storage business, but we're not going to get away from it completely. Another challenge is training of staff for the new permitting program. While we're this busy, we have to conduct day-to-day activities. People don't care that my staff isn't training. They still want their permit when they want it. They want someone to show up at their neighbor's house and give them a ration because they don't like listening to the music levels, or there's 15 people living in a single bedroom. Those are the types of calls that both Bruce and I receive. We are continually prioritizing violations. Not all of the violations are addressed in a timely manner due to the staffing levels. Okay. The recommendations that I have would be to consider staffing levels versus the workload, increase the overtime budget that we have. We currently have a $10,000 overtime budget. We had an additional $10,000 in there pre-COVID, which was removed as it was uncertain as to what the receipts would be, so that it was removed. But that budget with the staffing levels that we have, allows us to accommodate training opportunities as well as additional workloads on weekends. They're scanning things that we have a year of scanning that hasn't been done. And we also get call outs. We have, there was COVID tracing. I'm not so certain that that's being done. Restaurant visits, there's dog bites. That Bruce, I'm sure will talk about that in his presentation. There's, my staff is constantly being called out, but in the same token, I have a plumbing inspector and an electrical inspector who need to take vacation. And while they're on vacation, I need someone to do their job, which I'm not qualified to do as I'm not a licensed plumber or an electrician. So we hire alternates. We have alternates on call that will come in and fill in. Well, they get paid out of an overtime budget as well, or a part-time budget, and then that runs in the red, and the money gets flipped over to the part-time salaries. That's the way I understand that it's going to work. Updating the vehicle fleet, I just went through a process with the capital budget committee, which I'm sure was more painful for them than it was for me, being it was my first time ever. I've sought $50,000 per vehicle for plug-in hybrids, SUVs, to get my staff to have their equipment in their vehicles and answer these emergency calls. They approved 3 of them at, I think, $36,000 a piece, 3 per year over the next 3 years. So that will replace the aging fleet of vehicles in the inspectional services department. Okay, all right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for listening and putting up with it. Hope everyone's awake, and I'm here for any questions.
I think I see some awake faces. Questions?
I see no faces.
George.
Mark, question for you.
And Bill, can we lose the presentation, please? And just see each other. Thanks.
Yeah. Mark, question for you. Plug-in stations for the cars as you get them. Do we have them available?
We have 4 of them outside. I requested the plug-in hybrids when we had the tornado that went through here back a couple of years ago. I requested a lot of things from the previous administration. One of them was radios. One of them was smartphones. I couldn't contact my staff. And plug-ins during storms, strictly plug-ins aren't valuable to us as we answer calls for storms. And when the power's out, there's no power to those stations anyway. So the plug-in hybrids enable us to just be sure that we're ready all the time, because they're technically, they're also emergency vehicles, not just daily commuter vehicles for inspection. So there aren't enough of those stations, but I understand that the way I understood the Green Communities Act when it was put into place was that they would be able to get some more of those plug-in stations for these vehicles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's neat. Other members? George?
Mark, I'm not sure what you mean by turnovers. I think as you talked, I think I'm getting a sense, but these are people who have been reported by others, and you go out and.
Oh, our turnovers are actually cash. We took in receipts and we handed the money over. Revenue we turned over to the town.
Oh, so this is just the fee revenue you generate.
Correct.
Application fee. Okay, good.
Other questions for Mark? Mark, so the OpenGov system, is that the e-permitting thing that you all were working on with the commission like 5-10 years ago? Or is that
No,
something new?
this is something new. It's a replacement for, I believe, the program that you're talking about, which is the
Oh.
CELA program.
Already replacing it, okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll keep my opinions to myself. But it's the same program. With this program, it enables people to have an account technically in the system. So Barnstable uses the same system. So any contractor that's applied in Barnstable can log in Yarmouth using their own login information, and they have an account. So during trials, or while I technically just went in and played with it for a while, I logged into Duxbury's because I have login information. I pulled a building permit on my Masonic Lodge where I'm a member. And then I had to call the building commissioner and tell them to disregard that permit. So, but I just wanted to test the system from a person who's never seen it. And it in my opinion, it functions 10 times better. It's much more user-friendly. The current system that we have causes the public a lot of frustration. And like electrical permits with the program we currently have, the permitting program doesn't connect with the state's electrical database with the not the electrical data, it's the electrician's database for their licensing. So because they didn't want to pay the additional, I don't know what the number was, last number I heard was $40,000 for access to that database, which gets updated every year, where with the OpenGov program, it's part of the system. So we don't have to pay any additional fees. And that will allow electricians, I've been collecting, I don't know why I've done it, but I've been collecting email addresses from electricians who are reluctant to go online to do this stuff and just putting them in the system. So the program, my iPad's over there, but if we, part of the system is that using the iPads during the inspections, what's the benefit to the contractors that when we do our inspections, we put in the results of that inspection sitting in the vehicle in front of the property. And we hit the send button and it sends the results of that inspection immediately to the contractor, which limits the number of phone calls that they make to town hall, wonder what the status of their inspection is, can they call their plasterer? So there are a lot of benefits to, Acela uses that system currently, and I made sure that OpenGov uses that, but that's one piece of it. There's still people that are refusing to do it, and I have IT setting up the 2 computer stations on my countertop that when people come in and want to give me paper, I'm going to point them to the computer and we're going to teach them how to use that system right in place. So it'll get them comfortable with it, and then they can start doing it from their office or paying their office staff to do it. It's actually very user friendly. I think they'll be happy with it.
That sounds terrific. It sounds like it'll be helpful to your staff, which sound like they're already got a lot on their plate, and hopefully, make their lives a little bit easier, and also help when people are building. One other question that I have is, Karen had referenced how Kyle Pedicini, in his role as economic development coordinator, I think, has helped businesses when it comes to various permitting. So I assume that references your department, as well as probably Bruce's. I'm just wondering, and this is maybe a question writ large, if there's been any conversation of, okay, these are the trends that we're seeing, what can we do to kind of overall improve the process? And bear in mind before you answer that I am not suggesting that you do more with less, right? But like, it kind of goes to the broader question that I'm asking of all department heads, which is, if you had investments in certain, key areas within your departments, what could you do that could potentially be a revenue generator for the town? And in this case, making something easier for businesses could potentially help grow our, commercial tax base. So just wondering about that.
Well, the building department's role is regulatory. So, Kyle is helpful where he asked a bunch of questions of the applicant or the inquirer. And then he'll visit my office and we'll go over the points. And then, then he's able to give the developers some input to get them started down the design trail. As far as, increasing, bringing in more revenues, we pretty much charge for everything that we do already. So we could increase fees, but then you run the risk of you create an underground economy. People just stop pulling.
That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about in instances where, and I guess, with certain department, towns do it differently, town by town, but there are certain services that potentially could be offered to other towns to do it for them and charge them and then make a profit on it that could go back into the town's coffers. Or in the case of, if there are any kind of, I'd have a hard time believing that there's no bureaucracy at all, and there's no red tape that needs to be streamlined or cut that could help improve and streamline the process for businesses that are looking to build, develop, et cetera, within town, and that making that investment couldn't help us in the long run when it comes to growing our commercial tax base. That's what I'm referring to.
Well, we can certainly look towards that. Well, like I said, everything's regulatory, and I think by making the process maybe not necessarily easier, but defining the process, and instead of just throwing a roadblock in front of somebody, what my staff is required to do is to point them in the direction that they need to go in. If you have to go to the Board of Appeals, that's what you have to do. I'm sorry, but we'll help you get there. We help you with the application. So we try to make it as painless as possible, but it's never painless. I don't know if I'm answering your question properly.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard over the years that each town, tends to kind of define certain things differently, and sometimes it's not always in compliance with like the state building code. And that, I mean, these are the things I hear. I don't know if they're real or not, but and it's not necessarily something that you need to be, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but what I'm trying to do in broaching this conversation is get the conversation going within departments and town hall to be imagining what could the future look like as our as our town grows, over the next 10 years. If there's something that, like, hey, if I had this software, or I had, 2 more people, I could do X. I don't know what X is, right? But the net benefit to the town would be Y. And there's a delta there. There's a profit that we could put back into the town coffers. That's the type of thing. I just think about it is all I'm asking.
Well, since I came here 10 years ago, I have been streamlining. For instance, nobody likes to fill out paperwork, and only half of them read 1/4 of the page. So, for instance, a use and occupancy permit was a 5-page document. That's a lot of work for, we're not looking for all of the information. So that frustrates people. So what I did was I took a 5-page document and they turned it into a 3/4 page document.
Great.
And that, so somebody wants to open up their ice cream shop, for instance, in town, they do need the inspections. There's nothing you can do to get around that. That's 780 CMR, Mass State Building Code. But the process to get the departments there to do their inspections is shortened from, as I said, a 5-page document to a 3/4 page document. Same information. I just took all the information off and created a new document. So that I went through every document in this department, and everything's been updated since I got here. And I'm not saying it can't happen anymore. We can try to streamline more, but that's time, and we don't have any time these days. It's just been ridiculously busy with permitting and complaints. And I get phone calls from police department at 7 o'clock in the morning that there's people living in hotels in town, and that hotel just had a water break in it, as a matter of fact, and there were 6 people still living in the hotel that weren't supposed to be there. So those are the type of things we deal with. So one of my guys spent an hour over there today walking through, taking pictures, writing a report, and then he's got to come back here and do take an hour, write a letter, and get it off to the owner of that motel, just to let them know the status of their violations. So there's a lot that goes on here, and I understand what you're saying, and we always try to do things. And if somebody has a better idea, I'm willing to listen to it. But not everything works for the type of business that we do here.
Yeah, no, and I certainly understand what it's like to have all the fires that you need to put out, and that's where it takes up a lot of your bandwidth. It's just something to think about over the course of the next 6 months, next year, and as you're running from putting out one fire to another, if something occurs to you that you say, hey, you know what, if we strategically invested here, this
Right.
could potentially be helpful. Keep that in mind, write it down on a Post-it, and we'll plan on bringing it into us next year.
I need a big poster or a little one. I got this one.
That'll do just fine. George.
Let me
Go
just
ahead.
reinforce what Stephanie is saying here. Let's assume you're not going to change any of the requirements. The regulatory function is the primary function you have. But if it turns out that in the process, either what we're doing can be packaged to sell to other communities, regionalization, there might be revenue for us. That's not your primary goal. Your primary goal is to regulate. Second of all, if because of the way you do it, and whatever attracts more property owners to Yarmouth, then we have more property tax to be collected going forward. But nobody's saying don't regulate to achieve those 2 secondary goals.
Or to do more with less.
Yeah, don't ask me to do that anymore. I'm joking. We've heard that since I started working here.
I think it really means doing less with less.
Yeah, well, it seems to be that way these days. But the regionalization matter, we've had these discussions. There's been discussions at the state level. we're all appointed by our local appointing authority, which in my case is either the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator. I just met with the Insurance Services Organization today. It's my 5-year audit. So today was my audit. That's what I did all afternoon while I was, trying to prepare for this. We preparing for that thing took months. It's just there's a book that I handed her and the lady, and she, we went through that all. But regionalization, that was a discussion that we've had, and it basically, like if I need additional staffing, I call the state inspectors and they'll come down here. When we had the tornadoes in town, we had such a good handle on it. They sent 4 inspectors here and I didn't need their help. We sent them to Harwich or Brewster needed more help. So I do get the regionalization thing. It has been a topic of discussion in the past at the state level. We in Yarmouth, as a matter of fact, and we just had the state inspector give his monthly district meeting. So I have him come to Yarmouth now. We met in the hearing room because I don't have to pay my guys to travel, number one. And then I can, I get, we're centrally located on the Cape, and, we've had these discussions and we bounce ideas off each other, and there's 25, 30 people in the room trying to figure out what's a better way to do it. And we pick up ideas from each other that way as well. It's it's very difficult to manage doing what you need to do and then satisfy the public at the same time. Nobody likes to be told they need to do something, but luckily for us, I can open up a book and say, well, this is what it says. This is what you need to do. In some cases, there is no deviation from what that book says. So I do appreciate the input, and we're always thinking like that. We're always looking for ways, because if it makes it easier for them, it's also easier for us. So, we're trying.
Yeah, I mean, the state may not, be pushing regionalization now, but it could again in 5 years, or there could become just a need amongst Cape towns because of all the dynamics we have to deal with economically. So how can we poise ourselves to be, ready to offer services to, capture business, just
Right.
something to think about, and, we'll let you go, but something to think about for next year. And then the other thing I would just say for next year, and I totally understand you had an audit going on. I know what that's like.
It's done. It's done.
But congratulations. But
Thank
I would
you.
just say in the future, the committee really, we're trying to get everyone in the habit of getting us their memos and presentations the Friday before the meeting, so that we all have time to digest it. We can get you questions in advance, and you're not scrambling and we're not scrambling. So just for future
That would have been
reference.
easy if my whole staff had been in the office, but everybody was out with the COVID. It was me and 2 other
Oh.
people in this whole department. So
Yeah.
we were shorthanded for about 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
we're
Next
back
year.
to
though.
staff. Next year we'll be on it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. We have Bruce next.
Yes, Health Department is next and the presentation is up.
Okay, am I on?
You are
Yeah.
on, Bruce. Take it away.
Very good, thank you. Board of Health, Health Department, start with the mission statement. Protecting the health and the environment and residents of the town through enforcement of state and local regulations, administering health and safety programs, and proactive planning on regulations and preventive programs. Let's see, okay. Key highlights of the past year. Response to the COVID pandemic, which really took over the whole office, and which is ongoing as we speak and today. They released the data today, and I see our town has increased in our COVID positivity rate from 11 up to almost 20%. So we're going to be the second highest town on the Cape with a high positivity, just behind Barnstable. So that's quite a jump for us, because the last week we were at 12. Our COVID numbers had come down, but they have jumped up. So we spend a lot of time on that continuing. Duffy 2 is Duffy Health Services, is a support navigator that we work with on substance abuse issues and disorders. 3, the past years, the new business is expansion, working with owners and developers They'll come in and sit down with one of the staff people if they're handling hazardous materials. Kyle will sit down with them, go over what they need, then work with them if they have to go through zoning change in the Board of Appeals and a Board of Health hearing. So that's a time process for that inspector. We'll also look at the business expansion if it's in the Aquifer Protection District to protect the drinking water. We'll be working with the engineer to see what their nitrate loading is to ensure protection of the town drinking water. So that's a lot of consulting within the office on those programs. Then it just gets down to the highlights the last year of what we're inspecting ongoing between motels, inns, lodging, and camps that we have in town that we're out there on a regular basis on inspections, and then also on following up on complaints. Swimming pool and permits that we have in town, which includes whirlpools, indoor and outdoor pools. And Yarmouth has the most swimming pool permits of any town in the state. So that's a very area that takes top priority because it's a lot of safety issues to make sure everybody's staying in compliance with that enforcement. Food safety permits, inspections of permits issued of 345 between restaurants, seasonal restaurants, farmers market, fairs that come through town that require permitting and inspection. And then housing rentals that I'm going to talk a little bit more as we go through the program, that we're right around 3,400 housing rentals, which we've seen an increase from the state short-term rental bylaw, Airbnbs, and keeping track of that. So that's an area I'll talk more because I know you're going to have questions on our request for a inspector on that and some financial points on that. Okay. Overall of the budget, I'm just going to look at what's being requested 2023. The salary increase shows the request that we're asking for a second housing inspector. Expenses remained level funding. There's no increase in any of the expense line items. We do have human services placed back in, requesting that to be restored at $60,000. That will try to bring it back up with one step, maybe the following year to get back up to 70,000. And in the past, the town was up to 80,000. The nursing services, we're looking for that to be restored, which it was not in last year. And that's the VNA that we use in town that goes out and assists people in the home as needed. Okay. Changes in the budget. As I mentioned, the second housing inspector, and I'll go into that a little bit more depth on the next slide. Restoring our 12 human services that I'll show you on the next slide, where they are. The expenses, we feel good, keeping them at level funding. We keep a close eye on all the expenses from working with each of the inspectors and the secretaries to monitor that. The overtime, that will be an overtime budget that Mark mentioned that we have, that's used for any overtime. And what we have now is one of our inspectors that has to do animal inspections, which is quarantines. We've been unable to fill the animal contract inspector for about a year now, which is a part-time inspector that goes out and does the quarantines for the number of cats or dogs that need to be quarantined because of either biting or tangling with a wild animal. So a lot of those quarantines need to be done after hours, after 5 o'clock. We have to check them the first day, and then we have to go back and check them in 10 days for any possible rabies. The people usually are working, so they ask us, can you come out at 5:30 when they get off work? So we try to do that. If we have to send out a person, obviously that's overtime. Sometimes the 10-day quarantine comes up on a weekend, a Saturday or a Sunday. They're looking to get their animals back out so they're not cooped back up in the house, and they would like to have them inspected. So we ask one of our staff person, would they go out to do an inspection at that time? Right now, we're looking at obviously the overtime budget, what we have. And if not, if it's not some flexibility in it now for the rest of the year, we'll just need to tell people they would have to be home during town hours for an inspection. We do get a lot of pushback on that when they tell us that they're working a job and they need to work 1 or 2 jobs and they can't be home at 4 o'clock for an inspection or even during the week. So that's a tough one we have to discuss with people back and forth, but that keeps us busy with the quarantines. We probably average, it goes up and down. I mean, last year we had 83 quarantines that we needed to address. The year before was only 47, but in 19 it was up to 93 quarantines. The year before that it was 102 quarantines. So very time consuming position of one of our inspectors. And the next one, OPED expenses added back in the budget. Mark mentioned, so that's why you see a little bump in the overall expenses, even though our regular expenses remain level funding. Okay. Challenges, obviously flu and coronavirus are still with us, and looks like they will be with us for a period of time. And as I mentioned, our cases are going up, where we just saw almost 600 cases over the last 2 weeks keep increasing. So tobacco and vaping, that's something the Board of Health looks at to make sure they're in compliance. Substance awareness is a challenge. We need to get back into that. That's been an area that's been kind of on the back burner the last year. Health staff has spent pretty much all our time on coronavirus. So we need to get back into working with our town YSAC, Yarmouth Substance Awareness Committee is back and active again, more so than it had been. Working with the county substance committee. So that's an area that we need to get back in. There is concern in town on opioid use and substance use that we need to deal with that. And we need to put more education out there, working with the schools and working with the community. The Duffy program, the recovery support person, people can reach out to that person directly. Right now it's a kind of just a little less than a part-time contract position through Duffy. And we reach out into the community in that. So that's a big area, a challenge for us to get back out. Cyanobacteria in the ponds is new from, you probably saw that in the front page of the Cape Cod Times, the water quality report on ponds from the other day. We saw the bacteria in Long Pond this year, and we needed to close 3 swimming areas in the fall, late summer when it warmed up. So we see that as a real challenge next year as we also work with the APCC on the water quality testing. And I'm sure they'll pick up more of the cyanobacteria. So that could affect the swimming areas. People are very concerned, especially the people that live on the pond. Does that affect their house values? People that are renting around the pond, all of a sudden the people come down to rent, or whether they're on the pond or just in the neighborhood, they can't walk down. They said, well, gee, you just rented it to us, and now we can't use your fine facility pond. So, you know, we hear a lot of those questions when we're down there posting the signs. The funding for that, APCC is charged the town for that funding to do the testing. Carl at Natural Resources worked out a testing program with them last year and really kept the costs down. That money came through wastewater. Working with Jeff Colby, they used some of the funding within the wastewater for that program. But that will be an increase in cost on that as they do that, along with posting the signs. And the fifth challenge, the other, one of the next challenges is also the animal inspector to try to find a contract. Animal inspector, very difficult to find somebody to work part-time because you're not sure, it's not a set hours, not the set days, because you're not sure when the animals, dog bite or cat bites are coming in. We've discussed, I've discussed with town administrators that maybe that's something that we need to look at, possibly shifting over to the animal inspector, dog officer that's working 7 days a week, that they might be able to pick that up. So that might be a shift over cost to save us some overtime and free up our one of our health inspectors. In the past, we were lucky to have 2 people that had held the job for probably for 5 or 6 years. It was very nice, flexible time. They enjoyed getting out and going around town, but we have not been able to look at that. And our last challenge on the next sheet, rental housings. It's a challenge for us. We figure we're right around that 3,300 units. We need to get into them for registrations, inspections, and safety for compliance with the state housing code. And we also respond with the increasing number of rental units. We also get increased number of complaints, whether it's trash, water, screens, overcrowding, noise. We need to respond to that.
So Bruce, may I just ask, are you working with Kathy on the short-term rental regulation that they're looking at?
Yes, I am. I did attend a meeting a couple of weeks ago, met with Kathy and the planning board and discussed what the effects on short-term rentals would be in town and how much we have and what the cost of that is. And I just want to flip through. Yeah, so I'm gonna, yeah, so I mean, the rentals that we have, before I don't jump ahead of myself. Let's, let me carry that subject over to the next, I'm gonna 2 slides later and I'll get into the cost a little bit more. So if we can just go to slide 7, that continues the future need for the housing inspector so that we can go out there. We have gone to the Board of Health in the past that supported. I think I presented to this finance committee last year, and it can be funded from the current rental fees that we have. We currently charge $80 per inspection rental. And we think we have right now, we just sent out roughly 3,300 rental applications. And this is the busiest time of the year for our health office, December, January, and February, because all the permits are going out. Thousands of permits are going out. Some are going out by email, but most of these are going out by mail. So they're coming in. So we're looking at daily turnovers, daily looking. And people always think, oh, it's going to be the winter. It's going to be quiet in the health department. Well, our secretaries are flooded. When you look at the mail stacks come in, if you can just imagine of these coming in. So they're doing payroll, daily turnovers every 1 or 2 days to make sure it goes up so we can keep the money going that way. So when we look at the money, I thought I had a slide, but I don't think I do, but I do have, and I can get that back to you. We keep track of the money that comes in from the housing rentals by month, and we have that for the last 15, 20 years. So we know exactly how much we're bringing in. And if you figure that's at $80 a unit, and we're chasing people because it's not always the same 3,000 people come in because some people don't re-register. We send them one reminder, they seem to forget about it. So they kind of fall off the grid. We don't have time to really cross-reference everything right now, whether they're on or not. We can just keep up with what's coming in. We do look at the state list, the short-term rentals list that comes out. We've been able to get a hold of that. It's taken some difficulty getting a hold so we can compare. But we got a list of 700 rentals that are on a state rental list, but we probably already had 300 or 400 of them. So it's not all totally new. Some people are already registered with us. Some people didn't know they needed to register. So we're working with that. But when we look at the $80 that we're bringing in as a flat rate, there's no discount this year if they register online. So everybody needs to pay the $80. So with that coming in, it covers what the cost of the inspector would be. I think, to your
And-
question, Stephanie, are there other ones out there that we don't know about? Yes. We probably figure there's probably, it could be a 1,000, could be more, that either fell off the grid, don't know they need to register, or just don't register. We do have reminders go out, either through the seniors newsletter. We have it up on channel 18. We've put it in the water bills in the past to try to get everybody out there, but people will say, oh, I only thought that was for the south side of town. I didn't know we had to do that on this side. We get that as a regular question. Oh, I didn't think I was going to rent this year. I wasn't planning to rent. We were going to stay down there ourselves because of COVID. We're not going to rent. Then we changed our mind and decided to rent for a month or a week or short-term rental. So it's a constant challenge that we're looking at. We also have large rental units out there, about 1,000, 1,200 large rentals that come in each year that we know of, such as Davenport has, 300, 400 rentals, individual rentals, not short-term, but we're talking, year-round rentals. We look at rentals that we need to get into inspect for health and safety, whether it's a short-term rental, seasonal, year-round, that we need to go in there. So we know those rentals are coming in every year.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think.
No, go ahead.
Do a time check. We're at 7:43. We do want to kind of get moving a little bit, but I think you've answered my question, which is,
Okay.
do you have access to, the state registry and have an ability to kind of, chase down anyone who's not
Yes.
paying you directly? And,
Yes, we have.
I guess the follow-up would be, is that second housing inspector going to help you achieve that goal?
It will help us keep looking at, because new ones keep going on the registry that might not register with us. They know they have to register with the state. They might be hearing that from their tax accountant or whoever. Have you registered with the state? They don't know that they also have to register with us. So we need to keep looking at that list to make sure we're getting the registered with us.
Yeah. And the
I
thing
think
is,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the thing is too, is if you, depending on whatever bylaw or process you end up coming up with to regulate the short-term rentals, it could, create a kind of, you mentioned people, or actually I think Mark mentioned people telling on their neighbors, but if you create an easy process for people to do that, that also becomes a way of finding out about unregistered ones, and that can again help bring more money into the town. So
No, absolutely. We do get people calling in quite a bit on that, on their neighbors, that, oh, the trash is going up, it's noise, it's overcrowding, is it registered with us? There's too many cars. We're concerned of COVID. We get, that comes in regularly. So we'll double check them, and if they need to be registered, we will.
okay.
So, but that's the people, if there's 1,000 out there and that we think we can kind of keep track of and increase that, at $80, that's $80,000. I think we can, potentially bring in a portion of that.
Great. Thanks, Bruce.
The other thing is making sure those people that are renting is letting them know that they have to register with the state. So we get that income from the state in for the wastewater fee. And I think we brought in 1.1 million. So we want to make sure that that revenue stream keeps coming in, if we can participate in that. Okay. Good. Next screen is that's who's doing the screen. There we go. I'm just showing the human services fundings that was restored. We're very grateful that you're looking at them as a committee. I know the year before they were cut and you were able to halfway through the year put some money back in that we did use. So that was very grateful. the beginning of this year, we used some COVID money that we had available and worked with the finance department on that. And we're able to fund 9 of the 12 human services portion through using some of the COVID money as they were also dealing with COVID also. So it's good to see human services at least being requested to be restored. So thank you very much on that.
Okay,
And I
questions
think-
for Bruce,
Yes.
for the members? Any questions for Bruce? Any other closing thoughts, Bruce? I know that it's been a tough year for you. Any, George had mentioned kind of when we were figuring out what were the questions we wanted to ask department heads. You in particular came to mind of, are there lessons learned, things that we've done and innovated in or invested in during COVID that are things that we should carry forward?
Well, on the COVID front really has taken over the office because we have one person that spends, Phil, the inspector that's doing the animal quarantine. He's probably spending 3/4 of his days tracking COVID and working with our tracers. So, I mean, we're doing good. We're trying to get the education out there the best we can. We do updates through the selectmen meeting, working with the town administrators and the Board of Health. So that's important. That's taking over everything. The other challenging thing is we have our assistant health director position hasn't been filled. We don't know if that's a funding thing. That position's been open since May. We do have a contract person coming in to help review some of the septic plans, but that's been on a backlog because we can't keep up with some of the building that's still coming in. So we need to get that position filled. We have that posted on the several health websites. And there's several other towns up there looking for assistant health directors at potentially more money. So we're going to have to look at that staffing, but that's really putting an extra dent when we're already short that one person, the assistant director. So that's very difficult. And requesting the second housing inspector, will be helpful because we had an intern filling in for about a year as we're doing a transition. That person helped out quite a bit. So it's almost like we're down 2 people. And that's a large strain on the department. So getting the second inspector will be very helpful to get work done, get health and safety done, and bring in some extra money.
Any other questions for Bruce? Well, Bruce, thank you. A question that I've been asking everyone that I will ask you more rhetorically, and you can kind of come back to us next year thinking about it, is if there's anything that we invested in your department that you could do something that would bring in revenue for the town. And when I think of that, I think of, you really kind of shown what you can do in terms of a good job when it comes to contract tracing and public health, et cetera. Can you do training for other departments? Are there other things that across the Cape? Are there other things that you could specialize in and create services that we could charge for above and beyond the regular course of everyday work? So just something to think about for next year. The other piece is, we do respect where everybody has been so crazy busy, and I can't imagine what your life has been like the past year, but we are asking that everyone do try to get their memos, their presentations, et cetera, into us by at least the Friday before meetings. So for next year, we would really appreciate it.
We're looking forward to have a full staff to be able to do it.
Okay, well, we're going to be a little tougher about it next year. So
That's fine.
all right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the next one would be veterans. You should have received a memorandum from the county Department of Veterans Services. These services are provided by the county, and there is an explanation of the allocation that is requested of Yarmouth. Not to put Bob on the spot, but I think he's more familiar with this than I am.
Bob, you're still on mute.
Okay, good. Bill, stop right there for a sec. You see the Yarmouth number. I just want to mention 2 things. Number one, we finally received, it was not received by the time I reached my charter provided deadline to recommend my budget. So I did not have even the recommended numbers. Now, this is the assessment for the regional administration. It's not the veterans benefits. Veterans budget in your tab 6 is split into 2 sections. There's the administrative assessment to run the program, and then there's the veterans benefits. And the recommendation I had submitted was 43,447. As you can see, they're requesting 44,172. It's a little less than $1,000 more that they're looking for. And the budget hasn't been approved, but it's approved by vote of all of the Cape Cod town managers. And we have a meeting tomorrow at 1 p.m. for that purpose. But I would assume from looking over this material that it's likely that the regional assessment for Yarmouth will come in at 44,172. And the total veterans benefits are estimated at $130,000. And 75% of the veterans benefits are subject to reimbursement from the state. So wish it was the case with all of our budgets, but so a little update on the veterans budget.
Questions for Bob? George, it looks like you're talking, but I think you're on mute.
Bob, could you just explain what the role of the state and then municipal veteran services is? I mean, given that we do have a Department of Veterans Affairs, and I'm asking that question more as a veteran than anything else.
Yes, it's a very interesting way of organizing the system. It's different from most of the state services for all of the, SSI benefits and low income benefits. It all goes through the state, but the state statutes have established veteran services as a local benefit. So if any veteran was a low income resident, they would be eligible, for the SSI payments or other state welfare type payments. But veterans have a local office and a series of benefits that they're able to apply for. And it's largely income based. And most of it is one-time type of revenues, except the benefits are monthly for some of the very low-income veterans. And they also, through this regional program, provide a whole range of social services and other types of assistance for veterans, coordination of various social programs with some of the agencies. Also working with the federal veterans programs, and that's all done at the local level. And it's a whole separate statute that organizes that and does provide that the benefits for the low income veterans, that there's an income test and they test eligibility for those. I mentioned before, there's a 75% reimbursement that comes from the state to the town. So
These are in addition to whatever the services benefits that are funded to the federal agency. basically.
yes, but
they
the
tend to
federal
be-
agency doesn't do a lot of the income, based stuff. They
Right.
have the Veterans
So
Hospital.
These are means tested kinds of programs.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, that explains it. I just didn't understand what the distinct responsibility was.
Any other questions for Bob on this topic? Bob, the only comment that I had at reviewing it is there's no actuals, which makes it a little tough to look over. And then the other piece was that they're expecting their insurance to stay flat. That just, and everything, it seems like insurance goes up, health insurance at least does. So it made me kind of scratch my head a little bit, but that's all I have on it. And that's mainly kind of just something I think for next year. I know it sounds like based on you having that meeting tomorrow, you need to vote on it tonight.
Right, and I don't have the 22 is a budget, the 21 actual for the veterans benefits was 115,059. So that was last fiscal year. This fiscal year, the budget is 127,658, and I'm sure there's an actual to date. I don't have that, but we can, that's on one of the other budget sheets I was looking at.
Yeah, it's not in any of the documents that were sent over this afternoon. And I didn't spot it in section 6 of the book. So again, not super important for right now. I think we can move forward and kind of take a vote on it, but just in the future, I'd like to make sure that it's in there. So, Bill, we've got preliminary votes.
Correct. And that would be for the Community Development Office, Historic Commission, Planning, Community Preservation Committee, Conservation, Building, Health, and Veterans.
So I'm just going to ask a question of Bob and Bill. I did notice one of the human services agencies that's in there is actually a client of mine. Completely unrelated to this type of work, but from a conflict of interest perspective, should I recuse myself from that particular vote?
Yes,
Yeah, that would be in the Health Department then, right? Correct?
Yep. So
Right.
if we can separate out health department from everything else. And is there any other department that anyone else wants to separate out in terms of the vote? Okay, I will take a motion to vote on all the departments except for health.
I'll make that motion.
I'll make that motion. Second,
Need a second? George, okay. All those in favor, George,
aye,
And if I may, all those in favor of preliminary approval, and then we'll take them up finally at the end. Correct? Just to clarify the vote.
yeah, preliminary approval that of all but health. George,
aye,
Nate,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
I'm an I as well. Brian is absent. And so a motion on the health.
You might want to have a sort of a vice chair request a motion on the health to.
Sure. George, do you want to do that? And I will step away.
Sure, I'll entertain any motions on the health budget.
Second. Well, I think I'll make the motion and then Jack will second.
Bob, Robert,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
and I'm an aye also.
And do I have to like formally vote to abstain or just keep my mouth shut?
just abstain, say I abstain.
I abstain.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, George, for doing that. All right. Communication with appointing authority regarding member temporary leave of absence. So we've discussed this a couple points along the way. Conversation Bill and I had last week was it might not make a lot of sense to try to add somebody, over the next 6 or so weeks that we're going through this preliminary budget process. But that at some point thereafter, convene a meeting of the appointing authority, which is myself, the board chair of the Board of Selectmen and the town moderator, and discuss, ideally holding Brian's seat for him until he returns, and then filling Sarah's term, which really expires, I think, in May. So, we could discuss it amongst that appointing authority if they prefer to just leave it open until May and going ahead and filling for a new term. But I think, we have, Bill took a stab at a letter. I made a few changes based on conversations that we had in the last meeting. Do we need to have a vote on this, or I think we've already kind of as a committee voted or made our position clear on this?
I would say that you want to authorize the acting chair to meet with the selection committee to resolve the issues associated with a member who is out and then the lack of members and a member who has resigned. And then you would come back and report from the selection committee in terms of the appropriate action, because they're yourself, the board chair, and the moderator would sort of make the decision on the next steps based on one member wanting to continue but has an absence, and then another member has resigned. So it's best to maybe have the finance committee authorize that action to meet with the selection committee and come back with a recommendation after a meeting with the selection committee.
I'll entertain such a motion.
Oh, so move.
Thanks, Jack.
I'll second.
Thanks, Nate. Any discussion?
Just one question on, I'm looking at the draft letter that you started, Stephanie, and under my changed position, it has me as the vice chair, but you want me to be the acting vice chair.
Acting vice chair, yes, I will make that change. I added that this afternoon.
Yeah, you're not
we'll
dumping
get
it
to
in
let
my
you up.
lap, Stephanie.
Okay, so all those in favor, George,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Stephanie,
Robert has stepped away. Yes.
I also sent you a text or an email just before the meeting about a couple things in your letter there. One was you talked about minority.
I'm sorry, Nate, do you mind if we just finish the vote? I haven't
I'm sorry.
yet, and I just want to get that squared away
Go
for the
ahead.
minutes.
Go ahead.
So
Sorry.
I'm an aye as well, and Robert just left the meeting, so he is absent. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nate.
Okay, we don't, I can agree with minorities and stuff like that, but we have to have people apply. And right now, nobody's applying. The only one I've heard, and that was through Robert, was Pat Armstrong. So, I don't know how we publicize it without putting a sign out in front of town hall, which isn't the way to do it.
Yeah. So
Right,
what
Robert, I
Nate,
see Robert shaking his head there.
so what Nate's referring to is just referencing that at this point in time, we now only have one woman, myself, on the committee. We have no people of color, and just that it would be helpful for the appointing authority to keep that in mind when it comes to appointments.
Yeah.
As we have such a diverse population in town,
Yeah.
that it would be helpful for our committee to reflect that. That being said, I think it's incumbent upon us to make it known that there is an opening, and to encourage people to apply for it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the town practice is in terms of putting it on the website, but I'm not seeing any openings on the website or on Facebook or anything like that. I think that's worth doing so we can generate some interest in it. And obviously absent, any applicants of any, kind of diverse background, we would go with,
Yeah.
you get, you choose from who you get, right? But it's still, I think, incumbent upon us to make sure that we are promoting it sort of outside of the normal circles, and, making sure, again, we get
Yeah.
applicants that,
Yeah.
reflect our town.
Yeah. Did Pat Armstrong in fact apply?
No, she did not. I spoke with her earlier, and the application has capital budget committee / finance committee as a box. She checked that because she had applied for capital budget committee.
Oh, okay.
So she had not applied for finance committee. That doesn't mean that she won't.
Okay.
But yeah,
I think if I may, Ms. Coles needs to officially resign. An email to the Finance Committee is a communication. So I'll work with the town clerk to make sure that's official. That's usually where resignations need to reside. So I'll forward that email and start that process. But meeting with the selection committee will give us some guidance as to how to get to meet some of those objectives.
terrific.
Just to reinforce what Stephanie was saying, I mean, I think what we're suggesting here is we would like to emphasize the notion of diversity. If we're just communicating that, that's fine. That's all we're trying to do is saying it would be desirable, but we're not suggesting we would only choose among that group. What we're trying to avoid is we don't get a bunch of old white men applying again. Given that I'm one.
Which the town has a pretty poor reputation around. So it would behoove us to, move past that and, reflect the point that we are in now. Okay, so I think that we have resolved that issue. And I guess
That Mike, I'd like to move to adjourn, otherwise I'm gonna leave.
okay, and then we're going to lose our majorities. So Bill, I think we're going to have to table whatever else we have left for next week.
Sure. You have police and fire next week, and you'll get packets that are printed with holes punched for everything that's been come to you in email. So we'll get you that sometime Monday next week, but it will be all the past materials. So you have it in your book.
We can't get it Friday for the.
Well, no, what we're talking about is everything that you've been getting by email. I'm going to print it in holes punch, the police and fire information. We're hoping everything comes in on Friday. We'll send that by email if there's anything additional, and I'll try to get it to holes punch to you same day. But right now, I just want to get you everything that you've been getting in sort of dribs and drabs by email, so you can have it in your book.
Yeah,
and
I think
police
as
and
long as
fire.
we've got something by email on Friday,
Right.
that, especially going into a long weekend, that's not going to provide a ton of time.
Right.
Monday's a holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So Jack, I'll entertain that motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Well, it hasn't been made yet. Jack,
Too
does
late.
anyone else want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor, George,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Jack. We might have lost Jack. Jack, are you in favor of adjourning? Okay, I am an aye as well. Thank you all for your time, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye now.
Nice work.